Sorry, Bob, we're just going to start the show,
please,
if you don't mind.
A
short while ago, the president delivered a new statement from the White House on Russia and the crisis in Ukraine. He addressed whether America is in the middle of a new Cold War. You'll hear what he said in a minute. But first, Israel intensified its military campaign against Hamas today with the heaviest airstrikes since the start of its operation 3 weeks ago. The air raids could stop, but Hamas has rejected a Palestinian call for a ceasefire. Back at home, some prominent liberals have been wading into the crisis. Listen to our former Secretary of State actually defend Hamas for hiding rockets in civilian areas like schools.
The problem is, and this is something, I'm not a military planner, but Hamas puts its missiles, its rockets in civilian areas. Part of it is that Gaza is pretty small and it's very densely populated. They put their command and control of Hamas military leaders in those civilian areas.
And, in case you didn't hear, Hamas is a humanitarian organization, according to Nancy Pelosi.
We have to support the Palestinians and what they need. And we have to confer with the Qataris, who have told me over and over again that Hamas is a humanitarian organization. Maybe they could use their influence to
the U.S. thinks they're a terrorist organization, though, correct to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A humanitarian organization, Eric? I mean, what humanitarian organization do you know that has missiles?
I have no idea what either one of them are talking about. What, Gaza's too small, so they have to put their missiles in the schools, and it's a humanitarian. Here's the question. How do you negotiate with someone whose only mission is to wipe Israel off the map? You don't. That's the point. We should be behind Israel to just destroy Hamas. Just completely wipe out Hamas, defang them, dismantle them, so they don't come back and do this again and again and again. Hamas doesn't care about human life. They don't care about Israelis' lives. They don't care about Palestinians' lives. They certainly don't care about Americans' lives. They don't even care about their own lives. The only way to negotiate with them is to beat them, so we have to keep pounding them, stop listening to Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, and John Kerry, who put them on the same level as the Palestinians, and back Israel and wipe Hamas out once and for all.
Bob, you're shaking your head.
Well, I mean, first of all, the Kerry thing is a bad rap on Kerry. That was something that was leaked out of Israel, and it's not fair to Kerry. His proposal had nothing to do with making them equal. If I have one other point, whoever wrote that thing that said Hillary Clinton said schools, she never, ever said schools. That is a bad use of words, and whoever wrote it should be hung. Now, I think that now
it said like schools.
No. It said schools. Now, the fact of the matter is we're now into this. There's over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed. Israel's lost about 70 people, almost all soldiers. I think they've now committed themselves to this. I think Netanyahu said they're going to do this, going to get rid of these tunnels, and I think that they have to now finish it. And I think if the world would just at least have an impartial view about this, and the media have an impartial view, I have yet to see a European leader come to the defense of Israel strongly and beat up on Hamas, and I cannot understand.
Well, Bob, I think what's so troubling is that Hillary Clinton was trying to make excuses for Hamas, a terrorist organization. And what's implicit in what she said and what's implicit in what Nancy Pelosi said is that they're actually legitimizing the fact that Hamas has a right to exist. That's the way they're talking. They're not calling them a terrorist organization. In fact, just the opposite. And they're basically saying, well, they have the right to exist and the right to achieve their goals. Nancy Pelosi went as far as to say that we should help them. Won't this just encourage Hamas, Dana? And even further than this, to me, this is a huge departure from U.S. policy in past. I mean, President Bush was very clear when it came to terrorist organizations. We've gotten so far away from how we've described them with the Obama administration. It's just mind-blowing.
I think it's a little bit of fog from Foggy Bottom. So that's where the State Department is based. And I don't know if Hillary Clinton she would say, I wasn't making an excuse for them. I was explaining to everybody how difficult and complex the situation is over there. Let me put myself in the shoes of the Palestinians so that I can explain to you. And it's just not as forceful as a candidate you would hope for somebody to say, I'm very clear cut on this. You would hope she might say, is Hamas a terrorist organization? Yes. Should they not be putting Gazan civilians in harm's way? Absolutely. I mean, something like that that's very clear would be better, I think, for her as a candidate than explaining all the briefings she got at Foggy Bottom.
That's a good idea. Hillary Clinton has said repeatedly, over and over and over again, that Hamas is a terrorist organization. Simple. Pelosi is a different story. Pelosi doesn't know anything more about foreign policy than a sixth grader.
But Greg, it did sound like a justification, again, for why Hamas is using these kids as human shields, which, look, whether you want to support the Palestinians, I mean, Hillary Clinton has a very sketchy past with that. She caught heat when she put her arm around Suha Arafat when her husband was in the White House. Bob, it's true. I'm sorry. But it sounded to me like, even though she knows they use these PR tactics of putting missiles in schools and hospitals, she was trying to justify it.
Well, if you look at Kerry's recent failures and you look at Pelosi and you look at some of the mansplaining that Hillary does, you get the sense that Israel has lost the Democratic Party. When Pelosi uses the word humanitarian, does that mean that Hamas's missiles are care packages? If you call Hamas a humanitarian, that's like saying Ted Bundy is a candy striper. A lot of this comes back to, where are these people educated? Why are the media doing pro bono PR work for Hamas? It's because they all come from the same place, which is a far, I know you're going to love this, Bob, but they come from a far left campus that views Israel the same way that they view America from an anti-Western perspective. Anti-Zionism on most campuses is a major. It's something you get scored very well if you agree with your professors. If you are coming from an environment where somebody like Bill Ayers can get tenure, then it's no surprise that Hamas is seen sympathetically. If bin Laden were alive today, he'd be doing commencement addresses on some of these campuses.
That may be true, but I'm going to come back in here for Hillary Clinton. The idea of suggesting that she feels that Hamas has some right to exist over there and to do this and is not a terrorist organization, she's not apologetic.
She just said
That's
the reason why Hamas was putting rockets in civilian areas is because it's such a small country.
That's right, and that's true.
Give me a break. The UN found missiles in schools, not the United States
she
or Israel.
She didn't say it. That's the point. Just because
point.
our producers want to make it sound like that.
You said John Kerry didn't put Hamas on an equal playing field as Israel. He certainly did. The ceasefire that he proposed was, here, Hamas, here's billions in foreign aid. Here, we're gonna lift the blockade around your country and then move forward from there. That's exactly what Hamas wants. Nothing that Israel wants. Let me just tell you something. They're wrong. They need to destroy. No ceasefire. Forget the ceasefire. He shouldn't be calling for a ceasefire, Kerry. We should be calling for an escalation in Israelis' defense of themselves in the region.
The policy you just outlined for John Kerry has never, ever been written out as a policy statement.
But, Bob, on this show, you haven't passed called the government of Qatar a terrorist organization. You said it's basically a terrorist organization.
Yes.
John Kerry, rather than go to Jordan or rather than go to the Saudis, is taking heat today for bungling this even further by going to countries like Qatar and like Turkey. And as Eric points out, legitimizing Hamas because he wanted to negotiate directly with them. How can you agree with that?
Where do you expect him to go? The Saudis are underwriting most of the terrorism in the region, number one, so they can keep their little kingdom in place. The Jordanians are in no position to do anything. They're dealing with all these Syrian refugees. Where are you going to go? Who are you going to deal with?
Why do we have to deal with anybody? Just back Israel.
Oh, I see.
End it. Yes.
Oh, I see.
Here's whatever you need. We got your back.
You want to do away with any relationship with any countries over there? Egypt,
I'm talking about in Gaza, Israel, Bob. You're talking about all the other countries. By the way, I would beg to differ with the Saudis being the major financiers of terror. I would say the Iranians are.
Mm-hmm. No, not even close.
Well, that's where Hamas is getting its missiles. So it's it's unsettling to hear people like Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton be apologists for a terrorist organization.
God, that's such an unfair statement.
The issue with
not my
Kerry,
words, theirs.
The issue with Kerry is that when you're engineering a truce, it only offers an opportunity for losers to reload. The perfect truce is when the bad guy can't get up.
Okay, so you think the United States should go and just support Israel and not try to find some way to get a ceasefire?
I think a ceasefire is the equivalent of faking an injury on the field so your team can regroup and change momentum.
Like soccer.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's falling down and faking an injury.
Yeah.
And so you just once you do that, you allow your team to change the momentum. Israel had the momentum, and if you end this thing sooner, it's like pulling a Band-Aid off. Pull the Band-Aid off very quickly. The pain is quick and gone. But if you keep doing this truce thing, it lasts forever.
There's two countries that recognize Israel in the region, Egypt and Jordan. So if that were to happen, they would both drop diplomatic relations.
Why don't Egypt and Jordan get together?
Egypt was the first one to propose a ceasefire.
Okay, so come back to the bargaining table. Yeah, let them come back and do it again.
But Hamas said no. Hamas has said no to 6, including their own, by the way.
But I think, Bob, that I do think that if you read across the elites that write about this, that Egypt and Israel were on the same page. Qatar and Turkey were on the same page with Hamas. Yeah. That undercut Abbas in Fatah because Hamas has a relationship with Fatah, which the administration, I wouldn't say allowed to happen, but didn't really try to prevent. And I think what Hillary Clinton is being is realistic rather than apologetic.
All right. You mentioned knocking down the bad guy. President Obama took to the Rose Garden earlier today to talk about sanctions against Russia and possibly knocking down the other bad guy based in Moscow. Take a listen.
The United States is imposing new sanctions in key sectors of the Russian economy: energy, arms, and finance. We're blocking the exports of specific goods and technologies to the Russian energy sector. We're expanding our sanctions to more Russian banks and defense companies. And we're formally suspending credit that encourages exports to Russia.
Is this a new Cold War, sir?
No, it's not a new Cold War. What it is a very specific issue related to Russia's unwillingness to recognize that Ukraine can chart its own path.
Okay, Eric, what do you think about the sanctions? Some of them involve the energy sector, but historically Russia has had a pretty high threshold for pain. And this is not about money for Putin. I'm sure some rich men in Russia will squeal, but he's about power. Will this work?
I actually outlined these exact same three yesterday. I said,
yes, you
number
did.
one,
I give you credit for that, by the way.
The energy sector, number one, and he did it exactly what I recommended. The defense sector and also the banking sector, the finance sector. Block some capital to some international banks that do some Russian international banks. So you start blocking that, and it really, I think, honestly, I think these are going to work. I think these are exactly where he needs to go. And if President Obama and the European Union, who's on board with these and will play and participate as he said they will, including Germany and the Netherlands, if they play with Obama sanctions, spot on, Mr. President, you nailed it. But I guess you're watching.
And you all were calling for him to be a. That was a very strong statement. A very strong statement.
You didn't even watch it.
Huh?
You weren't even watching it.
I was just listening to what he just said. Now, what did you have to say that for?
Because I was sitting there with you. I was trying to watch it.
I know what he offered up as sanctions. So
I know because I told you.
But you
I was complimenting the president.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I think after you said that I had something in my teeth the other day, I felt like I had to get back at you. Here's a sector that President Obama didn't include that I think the next round should, and that is propaganda firms in the United States, or you could call them PR firms. They have pocketed millions of dollars from Putin and Russia over the years, and I think that sanctions should be placed on them, and they should not be allowed to do PR and make Putin look good in America, and especially in their country. And I would close down Russia today in New York as well.
Yeah.
Greg, what do you think about his response when the reporter said, is this a new Cold War? And he said, no, it's not a new Cold War.
Well, I guess it's not. It's more like a cool conflict as opposed to a Cold War. I think it's 12 days and a ruble short. Does that make sense? Because it won't undo the damage done to the crash site. That's still been, I think, irreparably compromised. The other thing, too, is what the hell did he do about France? Did he stop those? Did he stop the sale of those assault ships? Those are not Carnival cruise ships. Those are assault ships that will be used.
You should ask Dana. I think she knows about that.
You might know that.
Actually,
I don't know.
I admit that I don't know, and I've been trying to find that out in particular.
But I also want to know, what are they going to get out of this? What is the end game? What do they expect Russia to do? Does it have something to do with the crash site? Are they going to finally allow people to get full, entry into this and figure out what happened? I don't know.
We're not going to go to war over a crash site. The question is, will this keep the Russians from invading Ukraine?
But they're in the middle. Our own Steve Harrigan was on the air about an hour ago, and he tried to explain they are in the middle of a war right now. And President Obama didn't list off, if they don't stop doing X, Y, and Z. To me, it was very vague. What do they need to stop doing in order for them to, I guess, stop these sanctions? And if they don't, then what? Again, there was a blank that wasn't filled in.
These sanctions are going to hurt them.
Yeah, I think the sanctions will hurt, and the European Union has been reluctant to use sanctions because they're worried about their energy. If they think that the U.S. will help them with their energy needs, whether financially or physical oil, I think they may adhere to the sanctions. This is going to hurt Russia.
The thing I did say last week, by the way, that this shooting down this plane was the worst thing that could happen to Putin, and it is.
It's bad PR.
Right.
Let me see if we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit more for all of our in-depth policy analysis. I do think that Obama will help President Putin find a way out of this. One of the statements that he made earlier was that it didn't have to be this way, and it does not have to be this way going forward. So I think the best leadership will be something that we might not ever see, which is a way for Putin to keep the popularity at home, but to figure out a way out of the corner that he's backed himself into.
All right.